for sure. So, so let's get back to pink skin. And so why this pink skin is happening. So we know what the new generation of tech is being taught. They're being taught to, go really shallow. So when you're only implanting pigment in the epidermis, and they're using either singles or 3 liners, and they're using those needles on all clients, every single skin type, even skin types, they should not be using them on.
Yeah.
Like clients with thick skin, big pores, oily, sun damage, thin, delicate, fragile skin. Small needles, especially that single, causes way more trauma than the big needles. And that's needle science. That's a scientific fact. Yet the new generation, that's all they're being taught is the single needle or 3 liner. They're not going deep enough. They're going very shallow, only the epidermis, and they're taking 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours.
What I've seen that they've been doing, how our needle, our float comes out, a lot more than other people's, and we ride the tips of our needles.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of artists, they only put their needle out so much, and it's like they're almost riding the tube because it only comes out that far.
Yeah, and the reason they do that is so they don't have to learn depth.
Yeah.
It's like training wheels. In you girls, I float your needle. Needle float, for those that don't know, mean extending your needle out 3 or 4 millimeters. And so we're just riding off the tip of our needle. Mm-hmm. But you're right, they ride the tube. That's what we call it in body tattooing. So they don't even have to learn depth. They're not even aware or conscious. They don't develop the vibration, the feel of depth. They don't develop any of that.
Never learn the sweet spot.
They never learn the sweet spot, and they just shove that needle into the skin until the cartridge tip stops it. Mm-hmm. And it puts artists at such a disadvantage. But that's another safety measure that trainers do. Mm-hmm. And I would never do that to a student. That puts you at a disadvantage. I'm going to start you out right. And hopefully I keep you from going too deep. Yeah. I always tell you girls, I'd rather you go too shallow, it all falls out, right, and you end up with pink skin, than you go too deep. I actually tattoo you guys and make you tattoo yourselves. Watch the wound heal. And I know you got a little story about that, Amy. So, and we'll segue into that in a minute. So if you're only saturating the epidermis, you're not going deep enough. Mm-hmm. You're only saturating the epidermis. All that pigment falls out during the healing process or within a month or 2. And now what you see is not pink pigment. The pigment fell out of the skin. Pigment's gone because you only put it in the epidermis. What you're seeing is scar tissue. When that scab falls off, when all scabs fall off, there's pink, tender, wounded, scar tissue skin. On a lot of people, it's pink. On some people, it's a little more orangey. On some people, it's more lavender. On some people, it's shiny. And the medical community, dermatologists, doctors will tell you, on average, that can last 6 to 12 months, mm-hmm, sometimes longer. And on some people, it will never go away completely. So if all your pigment falls out, because you're only putting pigment in the epidermal layer, you're not seeing pink pigment. You're seeing that tender, wounded skin, mm-hmm, scar tissue. That's what you're seeing. Yet they think the pigment turned pink. And that's not what happened. Not at all. So the other thing that happens, let's say they are going proper depth, because this is the other issue. Okay, you got your depth now. You figured it out. All your shit's fallen out, client after client after client. So now you're pressing a little bit harder. Now you're going a little bit deeper, but you're still not saturating enough. They're so afraid of getting too solid, too dark. Mm-hmm. So they're only lightly saturating it. They want it to look only as dark as they want it to heal, right? And we all know it needs to look 15-20% darker when you're done. It has to look a little too solid and a little too dark.
And most clients, when I go super soft and, you know, I don't heavy saturate, what do? They come back and they want it darker.
They want them darker.
They always want it darker.
They always want darker. I know. Always. I just wrote that in on the Girlz Inc. board today in a reply. But yeah, so maybe they're going deep enough and they're getting they're saturating a little bit, but not nearly enough because they're afraid of a too solid look. And then what happens? You know, most of the pigment falls out because you lose a percentage of the pigment during the healing process with the scab. And so you still see pink because the pink wounded skin is showing through the weak saturation. The pigment's too weak. There's not enough in there. Pigment, when you saturate enough, when that client heals, you do not see pink skin. That pigment acts as a wool blanket, coverage. We never see the pink wounded skin. When do we see the pink wounded skin, Michelle? Removal, when we're doing removal.
Yeah.
And it's not the saline. You know, I've had to explain this, you know, in my class. It's not, saline doesn't cause it. It's because we're removing pigment. So I look at us as not just face fixers, but revealers. We're revealing.
I see all sorts of stuff.
We see all sorts of stuff once that pigment removes. You see all kinds of colors and different things, and that is scar tissue because we're not fixing good work.
Yeah.
We're fixing horrible work. You know, people usually gone too deep, you know, overwork the skin and
Well, it's like when I tattooed Stephanie. She has super, super, super sensitive skin. I tattooed her with sage, very cool color. Tattooed her, and she's like, Michonne, you tattooed my eyebrows red. And I was like, no, I did not.
I had everyone questioning you.
Yeah, everybody was questioning me, and I was like, hello, I know what your skin did. I know how it's gonna heal. I didn't tattoo them red. What, a month later?
Yeah.
A month later, perfect. Redness went away, pinkness went away.
Same color as my brow hair.
yeah.
Skin takes time to heal.
Some longer than others.
Yeah. And imagine if you're, and this isn't knocking the single needle because I don't knock the single needle. There is a place for the single needle, right? But but the single needle causes more damage. That's why there's certain skin types on fragile skin, sensitive skin, thick, oily. There's certain skin types you should not be using the single needle or even 3 liners. You should be into bigger needles like 5, 7, 8 shaders. That's the better needle choice for that particular skin type. But imagine these new techs with a single needle. Single needles implant and saturate a nano amount of pigment, a tiny minute dot of pigment, and then they're in there just scratching the surface over and over and over for 3 hours.
Surface scratchers.
They're surface scratchers, and they're causing a big wound. And they're not getting pigment in the skin. I see people not dipping enough.
And then they're getting pink.
And then they're getting pink.
That's why, guys.
Yeah, that is why.